On her wedding day, Grace's loyal German shepherd, Hugo, blocked her path as she tried to walk down the aisle. Everyone went quiet. For over 10 years, Hugo had been always by her side. At first, she thought he was just nervous, but what she soon discovered would forever change how she understood love. Grace stopped moving, her dress spreading around her as Hugo pressed against her legs. He didn't bark or growl. He just looked at her so intensely that she shivered. "Hugo, come on, buddy," she said softly, trying to move him. He wouldn't move. People started whispering. Her father reached for the leash. "Grace, we need to go," he said. Hugo growled quietly, making even her father stop. Grace felt worried. Hugo never growled. She knelt down, her dress pooling around her, and held his face. "What's wrong, boy?" she asked quietly, touching his gray snout. Then she noticed it, his hard breathing, shaky legs. She caught her breath. Something was very wrong. "Grace!" her mother called out, sounding impatient. "We're running out of time. What's happening?" But Grace only focused on Hugo, who had stayed with her through every sad and happy moment. She leaned close, putting her forehead against his. "I'm here, Hugo," she whispered. "I won't leave you." As she helped him sit, he leaned heavily on her. Guests whispered confusedly, but Grace heard nothing. Hugo's amber eyes begged her, trying to say something words couldn't. "Hugo," she whispered again, her voice breaking. Her fiancé, Lucas Bennett, came forward, looking worried. "Grace, is everything okay?" he asked gently. She looked at him, then back at Hugo, feeling more and more uneasy. Grace's father knelt beside her. "Grace, we can't wait much longer. The ceremony needs to start." She barely heard the words, lost in memories. Hugo as a small puppy, shaking during storms. Hugo watching over her during her worst heartbreaks. Hugo running through the park when she met Lucas. He had always kept her grounded, and now something was very wrong. Without hesitation, she decided. "We're going to the vet," she said firmly. Her mother gasped. "The wedding can wait," she added, standing and gathering her dress. She turned to Lucas, speaking softly. "I'm sorry, but I can't leave him like this." Lucas didn't hesitate. "You don't need to say sorry. Hugo comes first." Surprised guests watched as Grace, still wearing her wedding dress, took Hugo to her car. Lucas followed, calling the emergency vet, while her father explained to the minister. As they parted, Grace focused only on the dog who had spent 13 years loving her. Hugo pressed against her, breathing shallow but steady, fully trusting her. The car raced to the vet. In the back seat, Grace held Hugo's head in her lap, her wedding dress spread around them, lace wrinkled and dirty. Hugo's breathing was difficult, each shallow breath like a countdown. Lucas kept looking in the mirror, jaw tight. "We're almost there," he told her, though his tight grip on the wheel suggested otherwise. Grace wiped away a tear, stroking Hugo's gray snout. "I should have known," she said quietly. "He's been acting different all week. I thought it was just the wedding stress, but—" Lucas spoke steadily but kindly. "You couldn't have known. What matters is, you're here now." The clinic appeared, its parking lot glowing with warm lights. Dr. Peterson, Hugo's longtime vet, was waiting. When they arrived, he came forward, helping them inside. Grace carried Hugo, her wedding dress dragging behind her, forgotten. The clinic smelled of cleaning products and pine, strangely comforting. Dr. Peterson put Hugo on the exam table, working quietly as Grace kept a hand on her dog. Lucas put his arm around her. Minutes seemed like hours. Finally, the vet looked up, his face full of sympathy. "Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. Hugo has severe heart failure, Dr. Peterson said gently, his voice heavy with the news. Today's stress has made his condition worse. Medicine can help him feel better, but he has months left, not years. The room seemed to spin around her, the walls closing in as his words sank in. Grace squeezed Lucas's hand hard, her knuckles turning white. "Is he hurting?" she asked quietly, barely finding her voice. Dr. Peterson shook his head softly. "No," he assured her with certainty. "But stopping you from walking down the aisle, that was his way of asking for help." Tears filled Grace's eyes, running down her cheeks as she leaned forward, touching her forehead to Hugo's. His fur felt warm, his breathing steady but weak. "I'm so sorry, buddy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Lucas cleared his throat, steady as always, his presence keeping her grounded. "What do we do next, Doc?" he asked, his voice firm but calm. "How do we keep him as comfortable as possible?" Dr. Peterson started explaining a treatment plan, speaking carefully and clearly, but Grace barely heard him. Her mind was foggy with emotions. The wedding, the guests, her parents. It all seemed distant, like it was happening to someone else. She turned to Lucas, her voice surprisingly steady despite her inner turmoil. "I need to stay with him," she said firmly, deciding instantly. Lucas didn't hesitate, not even for a second. He simply nodded. "Then we stay," he said, squeezing her hand in silent support. Before she could say anything else, the clinic door opened with a soft creak. "Grace!" Her father's voice filled the small room as he came in, followed by her mother, the minister, and Sophie, her maid of honor. "We thought you might need support," her father said, his usual strong manner softening as he looked at Hugo. Her mother, always composed, was already wiping her eyes with a tissue, unable to hide her feelings. Sophie held up her phone, looking determined yet gentle. "The guests understand," she said, "but maybe we don't have to cancel the wedding." Grace blinked, catching her breath. "What do you mean?" she asked hesitantly. The minister gave a kind smile. "If you're willing," he said, "we can hold the ceremony here, with Hugo by your side." Grace's heart tightened, emotion rising in her throat. She turned to Lucas, looking for any hesitation, any doubt. "It's not the wedding we planned," he said softly, his eyes full of understanding. "But it feels right." Grace let out a tearful laugh, the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. She nodded, gripping his hand even tighter. "Let's do it." In an hour, the clinic turned into a simple wedding place, filled with love and warmth. Sophie fixed Grace's dress and veil, while Lucas straightened his wrinkled tuxedo. Grace thought he looked perfect. The minister stood ready, with Hugo lying at their feet, wagging his tail as if he understood. As Grace and Lucas said their vows, holding hands tightly, Grace felt completely sure. It wasn't the wedding they planned, but with the people who mattered most around them, it felt even better. When the minister finally declared them husband and wife, Hugo gave a quiet, approving bark. The sound was soft but meaningful, making everyone in the room both laugh and cry. That night, instead of a big party with twinkling lights and dancing, Grace and Lucas sat on their apartment floor, still in their wedding clothes, their fingers linked together in the dim light of their living room. Between them, Hugo lay comfortably, his head resting in Grace's lap, his warm presence filling the space with quiet peace. The three of them ate takeout Chinese food, the smell of soy sauce and warm noodles surrounding them like a comforting hug. Every bite felt like a celebration, not of the chaos that had changed their day, but of the clarity it had brought. Lucas turned to Grace, looking at her with admiration, love showing in every line of his face. "This wasn't the perfect wedding," he said softly, his voice full of both humor and deep feeling. "But it was perfect for us." Grace smiled, gently running her fingers through Hugo's fur, her heart full. "Because of him," she whispered. "He reminded us what love really means." The months after their unusual wedding were a mix of joy and sadness, gratitude, and the quiet pain of what was coming. Hugo's treatment gave them precious time. On good days, he was like his old self, following Grace, wagging his tail for Lucas, and enjoying walks in the park where their story began. But the hard days came too. Some mornings, he struggled to get up. On those days, Grace and Lucas adjusted, staying close and treasuring every moment. One winter night, Grace sat with Hugo's head in her lap, his warmth comforting. In the kitchen, Lucas made something hot to drink. Grace whispered, "You've been the best boy, Hugo." "The very best." A moment later, Lucas came into the room, carrying 2 steaming mugs. He looked at them, his expression softening as he sat beside her. "How is he?" he asked, his voice low, careful. Grace breathed out, giving a faint smile. "He's tired," she admitted, stroking Hugo's ears. "But he's here, and that's what matters." Lucas put his arm around her, kissing the side of her head. "He's a fighter," he said quietly, "just like you." The words settled in her chest, bittersweet and true. As the weeks passed, the good days became fewer, feeling more important against the growing number of difficult ones. And then, on a gentle spring morning, Hugo let them know it was time. The sky was clear, the air warm, as if nature itself had given them a perfect goodbye. They spent the day in the backyard under blooming trees, giving Hugo all the love he had given them. They fed him his favorite treats, whispered endless thank yous and I love yous, and held him close, their hands on his fur, their voices the last thing he heard as he peacefully drifted into his final sleep. That evening, the house felt terribly quiet. Grace sat at the kitchen table, staring at his empty bed, the absence of him a hollow ache in her chest. Lucas, steady as always, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You gave him a life full of love, Grace," he said softly. "He always knew how much he meant to you." She nodded, tears silently running down her cheeks. "He taught me so much," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "about loyalty, about love. I miss him so much." Lucas squeezed her hand, offering quiet understanding, no empty reassurances. In the weeks that followed, they honored Hugo's memory, not just in words, but in how they carried his love forward. They reminisced, laughed at his antics, kept his collar on the shelf by the door. His presence lingered in the spaces he had filled, in the habits they had formed around him, in the quiet love he had left behind. One afternoon, as Grace looked through old photos, she stopped at one from their wedding at the clinic. It showed a moment that now felt even more meaningful. She and Lucas saying their vows, not looking at each other but at Hugo, who lay at their feet, watching them with quiet devotion. "Do you think he knew?" she asked softly, running her fingers over the picture. Lucas looked at the photo, then at her, and nodded. "He knew exactly what he was doing," he said. "He reminded us what mattered most." Months later, on a quiet, rainy afternoon, Grace and Lucas walked through the familiar halls of the shelter, the very place where Grace had once found Hugo. The smell of clean straw and gentle rain mixed in the air, and the soft sounds of dogs moving in their kennels echoed around them. Grace's heart ached with a longing she couldn't quite describe. She wasn't trying to replace Hugo. No dog could ever take his place, but the emptiness left a space in her heart that felt ready to be filled with love again. As they passed kennel after kennel, the hopeful eyes of countless dogs met theirs, each one looking for a home, a family, a second chance. And then, at the very end of the row, she saw him. An older golden retriever lay curled on a worn blanket, his golden fur spotted with gray around his muzzle, his deep brown eyes calm and knowing. He lifted his head slightly, resting his paws gently on the floor as if waiting, as if he had always known this moment would come. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Grace felt it. That same special connection she had once felt all those years ago with Hugo. A silent understanding, a quiet recognition that went beyond words. "This is him," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion, her eyes filling with tears. "He's the one." Lucas knelt beside her, reaching out carefully. The dog, his name was Lucky, according to the tag on his kennel, let out a slow, contented sigh, as Lucas scratched gently behind his ears. His tail gave a small, lazy wag, and in that moment there was no doubt. Lucas smiled, nodding. "Welcome to the family, buddy." That night, as rain softly tapped against the window, Lucky curled up in Hugo's old bed, sighing as if settling into something familiar, safe. It was as though he understood the importance of the space he now filled. Grace sat beside him, stroking his fur, her heart growing in a way she hadn't thought possible. "We're going to give you the best life, Lucky," she promised, her voice full of quiet determination. Because love like Hugo's wasn't meant to be kept, it was meant to be shared. Through Lucky, they found healing, laughter, purpose, and the simple joy of coming home to a wagging tail and unconditional love. Every year, on their anniversary, Grace and Lucas returned to the shelter, not just to remember, but to give back. They brought donations, spent time with the older dogs often overlooked, and reminded themselves of the love that had changed their lives. It was their way of honoring Hugo's legacy. Hugo had taught them something priceless. Love isn't measured by time, but by how deeply you live it. And as Lucky slept peacefully beside them, breathing steady and warm, they knew Hugo's greatest gift had been this, teaching them that the heart always has room to love again. Did you enjoy this story? Were you also touched by Lucky's journey? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the story, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Remember, our hearts always have room to love again. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day.